we're as Johnny Dovercourt mentioned here to discuss artist care, and as he mentioned, this time, a greater time than ever for something like this, for a discussion like this to come up. And basically, I'm gonna have a chat with Anita, and she'll chat with me, and we'll chat with you. And I hope that that's not too casual for everybody here. So Anita, how are you?
Hi, I'm good this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's been a better day today than the day before. Yesterday was a strange day for me in terms of mental health, but here we are. So yeah. Why don't we start with you just bringing folks up to speed on your experiences, and maybe just give us some info on what's led you here to this panel discussion.
Okay, perfect. Just to say, you gave a good example of how mental health is a day-to-day, check-in live experience. And it's a very, it's volatile times, or interesting, challenging times. And the best we can do is check in and know where we're at each day. So I appreciate you sharing that. I am primarily a body worker. I came to healthcare via my experience as a dancer. So one might think, why am I talking about mental health? But they are intrinsically interconnected. And I think that one of the problems is that we tend to separate everything out, but our mental state, our emotional state, and our physical state are so intimately connected and so interdependent. And I came to study body work, chiropractic specifically, because of some mental health mental experiences that I had as a dancer in my training. I was doing some body work, and lo and behold, someone was working on a part of my body, and I had some interesting insights and some emotional release, and that really whet my appetite and showed me there is the mind-body connection that is undeniable. So that became my route into working with people. And whatever brings someone in, I work with them wherever they're at. But often it's a physical issue that gets people to seek help. And by having a kind of contextual approach to, it's not just your knee or your shoulder, it's your whole body and it's your whole being. How you think and feel is affecting your body and is manifesting in your body. That became my way to work with people. And I'm thrilled to work with artists because I really value artists and know that they're vital to society's health. So I do, it's a long answer to a short question maybe, but that's how I came to be talking on mental health, self-care, providing tools for people, empowering people. And sometimes it's just helping people, facilitate that interrelationship so that they can kind of get inside themselves and make changes. So,
right.
If you want me to talk about the Arts Health Center now.
Yeah, why don't we get into that as well? So you're doing work at the Artist Health Center in this capacity that you've been talking about.
I am. I do chiropractic, cranial sacral therapy, and acupuncture. All of those systems don't separate mind and body, although they're physical approaches to the whole. Some of them are energetic. You may have heard the term issues are in the tissues. So sometimes things come up that are surprising. But the Artist Health Center itself, a lot of people, more people are knowing about it. It's actually been around since 2002, and I've worked there since 2006. It was it's a manifestation of some grassroots artists getting together and advocating. And it took 10 years of advocating to connect with people that would fund it and a house for it. So now we're part of actually family health at Toronto Western Hospital and the UHN system. So that's quite a unique situation to be in. It's the only one of its kind in Canada, focused on artists of all disciplines. And it's also unique in that it has allopathic Western medicine doctors and nurses, psychiatrists, and alternative care people. So naturopaths, shiatsu therapy, massage, there's a physio. I hope I don't leave any of my colleagues out, and we all work together as a team, sharing information and insights and helping people the best we can. So it's available to people who identify as artists and who meet the criteria, are working as artists or learning as artists. And what else can I say about it? I guess it's some things are OHIP covered and some things are not, but it's got a subsidized program that people can look into by going to the website and calling, asking for an application. So it's our way of kind of funding a year or two of healthcare. So it's subsidized in those ways. And I can give you more details later, but I think there's going to be some links shown as well.
Great. And do you find, and maybe it's something that your colleagues experience as well, with regards to working with artists, do you find the experience any different? Like, are there different techniques that maybe you'd employ with working with an artist as opposed to someone who's not got an artistic practice?
It's a very good question. I think that one of the things that is kind of relieving to the artist and helps the therapeutic relationship is that we are concerned with the whole being and concerned with what you do and how you do it, from how you hold your instrument to the hours of practice to your concept of yourself as an artist. So I think there's a genuine connection that puts the artist at ease. And it's a very rich and rewarding engagement to work with artists, because we, especially in my case, coming from the arts, we speak the same language. So, being an alternative healthcare person, it's a bit on the fringe. Being a modern dancer was a bit on the fringe. So really understanding in a way where it's not a power dynamic, where there's an artist, we respect the artist, we want to help them get back to their art or make transitions or find ways to be easier on their body, kinder to their being. So it is deeply rewarding, and I feel like the relationships with the patients really are very rich. We support their activities, try to go to their shows, and I think, appreciating them. So I feel like when an artist comes in, they can feel at home. This is my place, I'm understood. I don't have to, a lot of medical facilities that treat artists like general population are missing a whole gamut of things that impact artists' health. I should say, since we're talking about mental health, that there are 4 different mental health practitioners there at the moment, and with various programs. And that 2 of them are OHIP based, 2 of them are not, but very helpful. And I can talk about that a bit more if you'd like at some point.
Sure. It all sounds pretty interesting to me, and I feel like I might have missed a boat or something, because some of those ways of getting help that you're talking about, I sort of already have in place for myself. So I guess I came across it in a, what maybe you could term as a regular way,
Right.
perhaps, and you know, through difficulties, through experiencing difficulties, through crises, which doesn't have to be as maybe like major as that sounds. I came to realize that help is required, and as a matter of fact, a song that I have on my album that's coming out on Friday, about help, and the fact that people don't really ask for it. We all need it. Your best like tennis pro has a coach, and so I always kind of find it strange, even for myself, like, not to say that it's me having a judgment on other people, but I recognize that in myself, that there's always a series of reasons or explanations for not getting help, or not
Mhm.
wanting, or not seeking it, not actively approaching that. So I'm just wondering, how do you guys, like, is there any kind of outreach that you guys do for the artistic community? I mean, aside from what we're doing right now, of course,
Mhm.
because this, I think, counts as outreach.
Yes, it does. We have done, one of our mandates is education and outreach, and over the years we've done many programs, going to SoCan, tent talks, fringe festivals, all sorts of events and venues. Particularly, we've gone to schools, so reaching young artists. Um, Toronto Dance Theatre, Randolph Dance Academy, the music faculty, drama faculty at U of T in York. So definitely a lot of education. We had a series through the clinic on overwhelm, on finances, any topic of interest. So that's with COVID dropped down a little bit, obviously, but we're all the people on staff are happy to talk and educate. Definitely. And it's interesting. I noticed you did have a song that I listened to, and I really liked how in your lyrics you say that help is like a 4-letter word, in the negative. And I think that, definitely it's important in terms of self-care for people to really look inside and say, what is the block to help? What is the block? And many times it's, not wanting to look weak, not wanting to expose oneself, not wanting to be judged. And, is it, and it's interesting because those are the blocks that will help, will impede you getting what you need. So I feel like the way around that is to really go back into your own self-worth and what it is you need, and be able to maybe switch it around, have a different attitude. If I come from self-love and wanting to be my best, or wanting to get out of pain, or wanting to know how to navigate overwhelm, or just get some sense of wholeness and grounding again, I may need to reach out and to look at it from a kind of a self-love, and turn it around so that vulnerability is really a strength, the ability, and that's a connection, because we all need it. So as soon as you ask a friend for help, it kind of shifts the dynamic. And I say friend because that's the easiest reach out, but there's a few things about asking for help that can be, kind of spun to the positive or negative. It's important to really understand what you need right now.
Right.
If it's, what do I need? How can I get that for myself? But to ask the right people, to ask, maybe a friend that's experienced the same thing, or to ask somebody that has some professional knowledge on it. Sometimes we ask the same toxic circle of people that we've been dealing with, and they validate the negative loop. So it's very interesting, and it's difficult to be specific, because many times, we don't know what we need. We just know we don't feel right. We just feel off. But just even that, opening the door and putting it out there is important. Um,
Yeah, just so many things, that you're touching on have also come up in my album as well. For everybody else a part of this panel, I've hooked up Anita with my album that comes out on Friday. I gave her a sneak preview, so that she would have maybe a better idea about me and where I'm coming from in this. Because part of the reason why I wanted to get involved in this panel and was excited that I had the opportunity is because of me being an artist myself, and I've, as Johnny Dovercourt mentioned at the beginning, I've released music since 2003, and being an artist, for anybody else on this panel that is an artist as well, it's got its highs and lows, and along the way there have been many interesting like thoughts, encounters, whatever, and I've tried to convert all of that into interesting music as much as I possibly could. So this album, I guess, we've mentioned it because it's part of, like, it's appropriate for this discussion, I guess, because I've got we're all facing some challenges unexpectedly at this point in time, and that does bring me to another question for you, Anita. How are you guys dealing with seeing patients and like seeing artists right now with things being the way they are?
mhm. Most all, I think most all of the mental health care is virtual at the moment. There might be a practitioner or two that are seeing people, but that's mostly virtual.
Right.
Body therapists, we just started back in September, so we were also trying to help virtually, with talking, with advice, with giving exercises, stress management, nervous system regulation kinds of tools. So now we are, wearing our PPE, our masks, our visors. There's a screen. We're cleaning in between visits, and just handling businesses as usual. So it's really important to, for the 5 months or whatever, have been pretty much glued to their screen, and all the tension building up. That's physical and mental and emotional. So it's really nice to be able to be in person. I don't know how long it's going to last, but for now we're there, and we're in a new beautiful facility. We're in the hospital itself, and we've moved across the road to another building, and artists are giving really good feedback. They feel relief. Some people don't want to go into a hospital setting due to COVID, and also just in general. So that's how we're dealing with it on a day by day, and doing everything we can.
Yes, that day by day phrase, definitely an important one. Just as I was mentioning at the beginning of the panel, yeah, yesterday for me was not one of those smiley days for
Mhm.
me. Just, stuff
Yeah.
happening. Uh, yeah, so uh, you guys offer a whole bunch of services. Your outreach through education sounds fantastic, and links. I think there's some links already provided in the chat section on how people can get in touch, and yeah, and
Yeah.
there were some other resources I think you wanted to mention earlier.
Yeah, I sent, and I'm hoping they'll show up. I sent them to Aaron. They're a lot for me to type in the moment right now, but there's some online free resources. Um, there's help if you're actually in crisis and you need immediate help. And there's mental health tools. So I had given those, so hopefully those will appear, or you can email me and I'll send them to you, or call the Artist Health Center. Calling the Artist Health Center for appointments or for the subsidy form is the best way to go. And we're in lots of transition there, so keep following up if you don't get a call right back. I just wanted to mention your lyrics because you did kindly share those with me.
Sure.
And I thought, how those, all the themes that you spoke about are what we would, cover in a course on self-tools and self-tool, mental health tools, self-care tools, and all of the key issues you touched on in your lyrics. I particularly, help was one of them. And there's another one where you talk a lot about the thoughts, the inner dialogue, the myths, the stories, and how, it's so interesting because I'm coming from it from talking with people and experiencing their pain and a scientific and all my reading. And then, you've experienced it and you're creatively putting out the same messages. So I really love that intersection.
Thanks, I appreciate it. This song in particular that Anita is talking about on my album is called Mean Little Myth. And I tried, part of the impetus came from, just the work that I've been doing on myself with my own therapist and dealing with the myths that people create for themselves. And as I mentioned in the song, partly on purpose, part to protect ourselves, partly accidental as a result of, maybe the protection and other things and people that we encounter in our lives. And so, I'm always interested in trying to create songs that people generally can relate to, as people might be able to recognize from the way I'm talking. If they've heard any of my music, you probably know that guns and any other weird stereotypes you might hear about the streets they're not my thing. They say write what you know. So I'm, with this album in particular, I just really wanted to address these inner feelings, emotions, thoughts that people have, because when you're at a stage, and even before COVID, because I started writing it before any of this even happened, but now more, especially more than ever, it's like work on ourselves, work on our inner self, I think is really just huge for everyone at the moment, because what else are we doing with our time?
Right. Well, I think that is one of the, I don't know if I can even say silver lining, but one of the calls about these times and the going inward. And, with my work with artists and teaching workshops for so many years, one of the biggest comments we get, no matter what the topic of the workshop was just how great it was for artists to come together and realize that they're not the only one that feels that way. They're not the only one that thinks that way, particularly feeling isolated, and the creative ups and downs, and how to balance life as an artist with life like paying bills and doing laundry and and all of that. So I think the isolation factor is important. So I feel like your album is healing in that it's going to, people will identify their own thoughts just aligned with that. So I feel that's very strongly, it'll be a relief to know, yeah, you're singing my thoughts or my experience. So that's great. I think that you know, in terms of self-care, these times are really calling us, like you say, to go inward. What else can we do? And it's the time, obviously a changing time. Systems are changing. It's quite an opportunity. And I feel like the call is to elevate ourselves and maybe emerge from it less burdened, more like, what do I want to leave behind and how am I going to dream myself forward? What am I going to create? What are the obstacles I need to actually look at? Unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess I'm all about the journey, and mental health is a journey. And like you were saying, the day by day, and we all have it, you know, to really take a light. Now it's the time to look at your own darkness. If you're isolated at home, and who knows what's going to be happening now, we seem to go into a different phase, to really have at least the motivation, at least a little bit less fear to look at oneself, to really look in the mirror and to own what's there, to understand the fear. In terms of anxiety and depression, you know, yes, they're exacerbated at this time. Artists are already in a vulnerable population for that. You know, in invalidating and vulnerable experiences, putting your work out there, being judged by others, you know, self-concept, power struggles, all of that. But it's such an interesting, you know, and it's interesting to be part of a population where, you know, that mental health is higher in an artist population than the general population.
Right.
So, you know, how to accept that and to really look at oneself and take care. So, you know, tools to breathe, to regulate one's nervous system. I went off on a tangent, but I was gonna
It's all
say
right.
one of my own experiences of having a kind of a post-traumatic stress experience and feeling anxiety and anxiety attacks. I realized that they were intense, but I was already set up from things in my life prior that I hadn't even realized were anxiety attacks.
Right.
I
Right.
had just thought, you know, I'm sensitive. I go from 0 to 100 sometime. And once I was understanding this whole process, I realized, whoa, those kind of trigger places are there. So one of the big things with your music and with coming for help, and certainly at the Artist Health Center, we're all about that, is just opening up the door to awareness. That's the first place for all healing, really.
Right.
To
And speaking of awareness, you know, you've brought up from your own experiences and then leading into the Artist Health Center, that physicality is an important factor, you know, in the work that people are doing there, and what maybe is having an impact on someone's you know, day to day in the first place. Do you like, from your own experience, because I can say for me, you know, it really it wasn't really clicking for me at first, that there was this mind body connection that's important. Do you, like, in your experiences with artists at the center, you know, is that sort of a common thing, or you know, 50-50, maybe not so much?
um
I know it's kind of a specific
no,
question
it's
to
an
ask.
interesting thing. Certain arts are more prone to have separation between body and mind.
Right.
I don't want to call
Yep.
anybody out. This is my experience. This is not a statistically researched point,
Right.
but I have found that, and no offense, I'm not saying it's to everyone, but particularly people that like visual artists,
Right.
very visual, conceptual ideas, it depends what the art is. If it's, you know, sculptural, okay, that's a sense of body, but there tends to be a bit of separation. Sometimes with writers as well, there's a kind of separation between body and mind. And I don't mean it in any negative way. It's where the focus is.
Right.
A dancer can be just as easily separated, mind and body, because the focus is so much on the body. So musicians in particular, and I'm assuming we're speaking a lot to music people, you know, it's such a great integration, because you're an instrument, you're a channel for music to flow through, you're holding an instrument that you need to connect to. The way you touch it is creating the sound. There's really not that separation. So sometimes, you know, in even in particular, if there's a waiting list for mental health, or somebody, I get sent a lot of people that have had trauma. So the first thing is to just feel what's happening in their nervous system, because you can understand something. You say, I've dealt with that, but the body has its own truth and wisdom, and the nervous system may still be revving way out of control, even if the trauma was in childhood. Yes, you've dealt with it, you've coped, but the nervous system has to get regulated. So the mind can understand, but if the energetic has not also been adjusted or dealt with, that can be a missing link. I don't know if I answered your question, but I wanted to say that.
I think you did. You know, we'll still warn everyone not to fact check anything that you said, but yeah, I you know, it's weird to think about that there isn't that I wouldn't necessarily see a connection with the physical, you know, simply maybe for the fact that for myself, my musical practice is a lot of time in front of a computer, and you know, how ironic, I guess, because then there's all this, you know, carpal tunnel syndrome as a possibility, repetitive stress injuries. It's I've sort of come to a better understanding, and you know, there's always talk of people needing to separate themselves. Like I've read a bit of the need to separate oneself from, you know, your work, and do it in small, you know, spats, instead of what I have been prone and known to do, you know, maybe much to the consternation of my wife and friends, to be working for like 6 hours straight on something, you know, that eventually leads to flattening out. So
it's interesting, because the creative process, you know, it lends itself to circular thinking, and to almost forgetting about time. You're totally involved, you can forget about your body, and that's wonderful for a set amount of time, but it's what you do to balance that. There's a whole segment in things that I teach called Give Your Brain a Break. And, you know, it's interesting, because you might be trying to solve a problem, or you're ruminating, and your thoughts are spinning. And so what do? You think more about it, and you go nowhere. You just create anxiety. So it's good to give your brain a break. Do something with your body, dance, sing, walk, breathe, do jumping jacks. Because it's all connected. So many times, you know, the exercises that we might give someone who's having mental problems are all physical, they're all breath, they're all nervous system regulating, to give that shift, because we kind of get so mentally focused. And also the mind thinks it's supreme, and it has, you know, back to the song, I forgot the name, but it's got myth in the title. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. Mean Little Myth.
Yes. Yeah. You know, there are the inner dialogue that just runs havoc, and we start to believe it. And the other thing about physicality is, when you think about anxiety, let's say, having an anxious feeling, it's a feeling state. It's a physical feeling, just like sadness is not a mental. it's not, I feel sad in my head. I feel sad. My throat's constricting, my diaphragm's tight, tears are coming down. So
Right.
it's physical experience.
Yeah.
And
I can attest to that in regards to that song specifically as well, because the first verse, so the song again that we're talking about from my album that's coming out on Friday, the second verse I try to address, everybody in general, like their dealings with creating stories to protect themselves and that sort of thing. And then, but the first verse is me talking specifically about myself and the dialogue, that the negative dialogue that's run through my head like a lot. And when I was writing that, I actually had a physical reaction to the point that for one particular writing session, I had to stop. Like I had to tell myself, you know what, cannot continue this. I'm not doing myself any favors. I need to take a break, because it's one thing, like you said, to intellectually think about something or discuss a concept or whatever, but it's another to be repeating it, like to be bringing it up again over and over and over again, which is essentially what was happening for me writing that first verse, was because it's just like, oh, I wanted to just spew all of the thoughts, that out of that negative dialogue into a song that rhymes. And so it was, it's work, it's painstaking work at times. And that particular verse in that song, yeah, it just eventually built up that I needed to take a physical break. Yeah.
excellent. Yes, definitely. And I think the more about the connection that people realize, the more tools you can have, you know, like you were saying, you can get at a problem by working at it and thinking about it. You can leave it and take a walk and come back and there it is. You can say, hey, how much of my day was in my head, and then go do something, go for a swim or whatever it is.
Right.
Big balancer, go in nature, just and have a discipline. Today I took a walk to just shift my gear from working to preparing myself to be able to be coherent and talk and be in the present moment
Right.
tonight.
Right.
And it was a discipline to have the intention of, I'm just going to take a walk and I'm actually not going to think. I'm not going to think about anything. When I feel like I'm going to think about something, I'm going to look around my environment and just feel the breeze and look at the leaves and hear the kids and all of that. So, in terms of the tools, and I think people are always interested in tools and what can I do? And it's certainly empowering. And these are things that nobody can do for you. But there's a zillion tools. The thing that's important is the commitment, the motivation, the intention, and the commitment to do it, to do something. And people look sometimes for a very elaborate tool. And they think, just breathing, how's that going to do? Breathing is one of the most intense, powerful, self-regulating, de-stressing, harmonizing things we can do. So it's very simple, but the intention and the motivation and commitment. And I think, going back to another of your songs, I think was had self-worth as a concept. And sometimes we have to hit rock bottom. Sometimes things have to get so dark. We know we're on that edge and we're either going to go way down or something. We're just going to have some faith and move up into some sort of light or change. Or, so I think that if we can care enough, the first thing about self-care is care enough about ourselves to do something, to do one little thing that's different, that's out of what we usually do, to shift things, or that cares for ourselves. There's so many things I would ask the people listening to just think, like, what did you do for yourself today? How did you care for yourself? Or did you put yourself on hold, or, what are the ways we care for ourselves? Simply from taking a drink of water when you're thirsty to more elaborate things like saying no, being kind to yourself. So I just, ask people to think, what is self-care? Um, and a lot of it is the intention, the mindfulness. That's a big word these days. That that we do. We all know we should brush our teeth, and we can do it like this, and while we're on the phone, or we could actually think, this is self-care. I'm doing this to care for the only teeth that I'm going to have. I'm stretching and breathing because this is my only spine. Things like that. So I don't know. I just
Yeah, no, that it's interesting to hear. I've never quite thought about, valuing brushing my teeth, because for me it seems so long as just maintenance.
that's
But
right.
yeah, no, that's interesting. I think I'll try to apply that at some point to get that
Excellent. And
going.
there's more power in any action that is done when you bring that, that awareness that this is self-care.
Right. And would you say that that's like through intention? So the idea is that you're moving to, like, you're doing things with purpose, as opposed to just, a reflex or because it's deemed necessary.
Yes. And I think um exactly, things become rote. We stop thinking about why are you doing that? I just do that. I get up and I have a coffee. That's what I do. Okay, well, what I picked a bad example, but let's say, what is it about that? Is it the routine? Is it the quiet? Is it the smell of the coffee? Are you tasting the coffee? Does it need to be coffee? Is coffee actually helping your system or not helping your system? So I think that it's being in the present moment. And I think that that is a huge mental health um, tool, self-care tool, because we worry about the past. We bring it dictates our thoughts and actions. We project into the future. And if we can be in the moment realistically and say, like you were saying, yesterday was not great. Today is a better moment. I'm in a better moment. Then we can, you can't change anything if you don't know where you're located. So I think bringing mindfulness, bringing what I'm mindful in this moment, I'm brushing my teeth. That's all you need to do. And then it might teach you something. Oh, I'm holding this so tightly.
Right.
Oh, or I'm really caring for myself. Whatever comes, it allows space for being and from learning and from giving power to it. Um, so
That's great.
uh,
Are
I think,
sorry, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
go ahead, you go.
All right, all right. Would you say that providing tools to artists that come to the center is where more of the, like where they'd be getting, the most out of things? Or would you say it's a combination of seeing like someone for help and then applying tools?
It depends where people are at in their journey. What I
Right.
find, which is really heartening from a practitioner standpoint, is people want to know what they can do.
That's great.
Paradoxically, sometimes it's important for me to say, you actually need to do nothing for a while. You need to let go, you need to release. It's
Right.
not about going to the gym tomorrow. It's about noticing, how much tension you're using when you're holding your instrument, let's say. So
Right.
it is very heartening that people want tools, and I find they use the tools. We're very careful to give a couple so it's not overwhelming, that it doesn't become another to-do list it's just too much. Sometimes if it's someone is just beginning and we're kind of peeling the layers and getting a connection, it's enough to have uh, a treatment and to let that integrate and to observe your feelings and what's coming up for you, and then to continue, and then to be ready to do some things. Because I think there's a lot of undoing that has to happen.
Right.
Thought process undoing. We don't realize that our thoughts create the energy follows a thought, and it creates how we're living, how our experience is. So there's a lot of kind of unraveling the pattern. And sometimes that's not a mental talking process. Sometimes it's on the table, having a treatment where your body pattern is just, oh, it's just releasing. Oh, okay, I can let go. Whoa, an insight or an emotion. I didn't know I was holding that there. And then it comes and it's released. So that's a very, empowering experience. I would look at the treatments as facilitating process.
That's great. Now, do you find working with artists that like, and I'm sure you've also had experience working with people who aren't, having an artistic practice. Do you like, I'm just wondering, do you feel like artists are more prone to seek out this kind of help or avoid it, as much as possible? Or maybe that just sort of depends on the person and what they're going through.
You know what? I think we've been at the Artist Health Center for a long time, and I think now there's been a shift and artists are seeking help much more. I think they're, again, particular artists, and not to offend, but I found that dancers, which you would think might be the most inclined to get physical help, avoid. There's a lot of stigma in having an injury. Same with musicians, that you might not get the gig, you might not be able to play. We might use the 4-letter word rest, but I think more and more, and unfortunately, mental health is in the balance right now.
Right.
I think it's, I tend to be very positive and optimistic. So looking at it like this breakdown, this mental health crisis that we have is actually going to facilitate some real healing of individuals, and that you're stronger on the other side of it. So there's a lot of demand. We've added mental health care workers, and as I say, sometimes I'll see them first for cranial or in conjunction with mental health, so that the whole system is getting shifted. And I find artists are, they're just very interested, very interested in how it works, and how little changes, or they're, conceptually, philosophically, I feel very aligned. So we talk about esoteric things. And I think, again, there's connection there on multiple levels, that helps the process. And it's always exciting to see who comes and what the day is going to bring.
Right. It's good to hear that you're excited about your work too. I mean, not to say that shouldn't be expected or whatever, but it's like what you're describing is a bit infectious as well, and just that it's
I think for artists, it's like you're going to be seen, you're going to be felt, you're going to be heard. You're not going to be, we're going to look at you. We're not going to just type on our chart and say, oh, it's a knee. Oh, it's a anxiety problem. No, it's complex people that have, they're almost more intense problems, because artists have purpose.
Right.
And because not being able to express is painful on many levels. So, facilitating that is very important.
Have you, and this is just nosy curiosity really, have you ever heard from artists that getting the help that perhaps they needed as a result of that, it's unwinding their practice. They're sort of like, oh, I've lost the ability to really, hammer home that vocal or really play that guitar, soulful guitar that'll make people cry because I feel great now. There's no reason for me to go through
No,
any
not
of
at
that.
all.
Okay.
It's so interesting, that whole thing, the whole myth about you have to suffer and you have to be in pain. I find that it's about, really, for me, it's about unleashing the full potential. And once that's free, then the creativity flows. And then
Right.
I've heard, people doing their best, and that's what it's all about, or being able to, just be adventurous maybe in their music. I had the experience of seeing, I mean, she was already like this, to give her credit, but a violinist that I treat, I saw her perform, and, it was just tears to my eyes to see music flowing through her, and knowing how much focus she puts into her own practice of meditation, of bettering herself, of nuances in her body, and all of that. It's like it's the same as one would put into mastering one's art.
Right.
To include body and mind care in that. Whatever you do to practice and get to where your mastery is, it's fuller when you do some self-care with it.
So you guys are some pretty good sounding coaches from what I'm hearing, that are, not only training the players, you're also seeing them in action and cheering them on.
It's true. I mean, it sounds, I think we really, I just speak for myself, but I know my colleagues as well. We have love. We are coming from love, and I feel like when you come, you can feel that, and that can open your door to your own self-love. So, not that wasn't so scientific, but it is the missing ingredient.
Right.
I guess
Well,
fear just creates more.
yeah, I mean, you have a varied background in terms of how ways to help people, and
Mhm.
I've, over time come to appreciate that in my own life as well, where with myself, I experience anxiety perhaps above the norm, and so I've, you know in certain times I've found greater help from my naturopath than,
Yes.
my regular general practitioner doctor, right? And
Yes.
so for me, I feel that if someone can get like any tools, combine a bunch of tools, it's really good. Like for me, it's been this combo of my therapist, my naturopath, yoga instructor when there was that opportunity to go to a class,
Mhm.
and to a lesser extent, my GP, and friends, and it goes on.
Yeah. Yes.
Great.
I mean, that's it's health is really the coming together of all of the parts,
Right.
all of the aspects of ourselves. And so there's not one answer, not one, if you want, one pill, one thing. It's a it's 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 an interconnected relationship between yourself and what you're doing, and between those helping you and what you're doing. So yes, one of the things we could think about for self-care is look at, what are you doing for your mental state, your emotional state, your physical state. And so you might have a very holistic template, like that you said, a formula, or the team that is configured now, that's keeping you balanced, helping you balance. And that is the key, is sustainability. It's
Right.
like key word. We all, when we have acute and we do everything and then it drops off and then we feel down about it, that we aren't doing it anymore. But it's like finding something that's doable, that's sustainable. And that each of those disciplines, yoga, naturopathy, all of them are holistic in and of themselves. So when you combine that all of those are body, mind, spirit,
Right.
and you've got a good formula. So
That's great.
not only have we gone from being afraid to ask for help, now we're saying this whole feast, there's a buffet you can taste from.
Well, that sounds great, and I think also sounds like a good point for us to jump into questions. I did recall there was at least one to start us off, and I'm going to. So how this will go is that there may be a combo of myself and some Wavelength peeps helping to sort of manage and mitigate the Q&A. But I'll start with reading this first question that we have. So Emma asks, are there any physical movements someone can do to specifically decrease the side effects of coming off of antidepressants?
Okay. Any physical movement where your heart rate can go up, not too high, but just, a brisk walk to a jumping jack. So physical movement will always be helpful, so that you're getting your heart rate up in a good way, you're oxygenating, your endorphins are releasing. Physical exercise needs to be in your plan. So that's for sure. Cardio raising, mobility type exercises. The other thing that comes to mind, there's two other things. One is just in terms of regulating your system, is breathing techniques. So one of them would be that you do a pattern of breath where you breathe in, let's say for 4 counts, you hold your breath for 5 or 6, so longer than you've breathed in, you hold, and then you breathe out for double what you breathed in. So it would be like 4 counts in, hold for 6, breathe out for 8 counts. So that ratio of breath regulates your autonomic nervous system. So that's a really good one. Yeah, I think I can. Does that answer your question? The other thing with depression, I would say, and we didn't touch on this, but I know when we spoke in our pre-chat, we came up with a bit of this, so that your digestive tract, your food intake, your micro environment of the bacteria in your gut is very, very key. That's where a lot of the serotonin in your body is created, and it's communicated from the gut to the brain. And when it's antidepressants work by increasing serotonin. So if you can have a healthy digestive system, maybe see a naturopath, we have one at the Arts Health Center, that's another really helpful thing. And also come off it in a, with your practitioner who prescribed it. Like there's a way of coming off.
That's good to know. Yeah, I have some personal experience in that regard, in that with this anxiety that I deal with from time to time. I've also been challenged with IBS, and getting help from a naturopath has been vital. So I personally would say, if that's something that hasn't been considered in the past, I would personally suggest it too. So we have another question. Are there any discussions for the possible inclusion of arts-based therapies at the center in the future?
Arts-based therapies. I don't know. I'm going to bring that up. Expressive arts. There are some programs, they're not that use some music. There are integrative programs, not happening now during COVID. But in terms of expressive arts, music therapy, or art therapy, we don't have that at the moment.
Right.
But I'm going to talk about that. That's a good question. That said, there has been a program, and hopefully it'll happen again, a writing program, not for writers, for anybody. So expressing through writing as a narrative approach to mental health care. That's happened. So no program per se at the moment, but it's a
Right.
good point.
Okay. Good to know that you're now thinking about it. You're now going to be off on a path to get investigate that. Another question coming in. What are tips for initiating a personal mindfulness practice when you're trying to break a pattern of constant go, go, go? Like having trouble starting it and keeping it going.
Okay, that's a very, very, very good question. Um, there, I would keep it very, very simple, to try to do something at the same time every day, to find your best time. For me, I'm a morning person, so early morning, it's quiet. Basically, it's called, I have called this the pause. So it's a mindfulness moment. It could be from 1 minute to 3 minutes, just to start daily. You sit comfortably and quietly, aware and intending that you're pausing. You're just being receptive. You're noticing your thoughts and feelings, and you just put your hand on your belly and you breathe deeply. You just don't get attached to the thoughts. You just notice if they're there, and you're cultivating the practice of the pause. And that is the best place to start. You can bring that into your day more by just randomly. I think it's fun. You're doing something. We talked about brushing your teeth or having your coffee, but you're just doing something. You're waiting at the subway, and you just stop, pause, notice, breathe, be. It's the change from the doing to the being. And it slows you down, and it's balancing your nervous system from the flight, fight, go, do, adrenaline rush, to the being restorative, meditative. And to be honest, it's so necessary for everyone to do that, because when you do that, you're in a space that you can respond from. If you're not able to come to the pause, the quiet, the non-rushing, you're going to be in reaction most of the time. And we know where that leads.
Right. Awesome. Very, very good questions. Very good answers. Kudos to everyone so far. So far, so awesome. So another question, are there any recommendations for people without coverage to receive financial assistance for psychotherapy?
Okay, so there are a few free resources that I think are going to show up. Full coverage, no, but we have something called the Joyce Sensidemus Fund. And if you apply, there's a criteria that's financial, and you have to be an artist. And it covers $750 for a year of any care. So in other words, you're subsidized. You might pay,
Right.
let's say to see me for a half hour, you're going to pay $19, and the subsidy fund will balance that out. And you can apply for that again a second year. And then after 2 years, if you still need help, you have to wait a few years, and then you can apply again. If you wanted it for psychotherapy, and I know one of our practitioners, Matt Eldridge, is happy to see people right now. If you used your whole subsidy to see him, you'd have 10 hour-long sessions. So it goes a fair way to help.
That's good. Just seeing if there are additional questions.
Can I answer on that too? There
Yeah,
are 2 OHIP only mental health practitioners as well.
right.
Call and put yourself on the wait list. One of them will be opening up his practice in more, the wait list is very thin, so you can probably get care in December, January, and just keep your eye on the webpage for Dr. Chase McMurrin. He's full at the moment. The other doctor is Dr. Paul Huey, and they are very holistic, very artistic, and fantastic.
Sounds good. Let's see. Are there any other questions? Does anybody else have any questions? Any at all? At all? Let's see. No one else has asked anything. So let's, oh, wait. Someone's asked a question. Oh, where can we check out your new album? Okay. So there are 2 singles that are out already. The first single, I think, is pretty much the most appropriate to what we've been talking about here tonight. The song's called Relax, and it is just me trying to talk about all the gajillion different ways that we could possibly find relief and simply, through relaxing. And so that single is out. There is a second single out as well, and the album comes out on Friday. It's going to be available on all major digital platforms. So your iTunes, your Spotify, your Google Play, your Amazon Prime Music, all that stuff is going to have it, and Bandcamp as well for those that are Bandcamp fans. So that's the availability. I'm things are coming along. I'm hoping people will be excited, interested in what's going on in that album. And again, I just really wanted to try and just create something that spoke more to people more than before, with like previous releases. I mean, as Johnny mentioned in the intro, like, sometimes I'm rapping about Klingons, sometimes I'm rapping about brunch, but this time, I'm rapping about feelings. And I think it's, more important than ever. It's what was the impetus for me in the first place to create this album, before we were hit with the worldwide pandemic. So yeah. But speaking to that, I have a question. Are there any tools that you guys provide specific to the situation that we're all in right now, or do you feel that everything's just, very specific to the person and how they're dealing with things, with life in general?
I think it's specific to the person's needs in the moment, but the needs are heightened at, everything's exacerbated. So, it could be from coping with relationships, communication, isolation, ways to reach out, ways to de-escalate feelings of anxiety, how to regulate the nervous system, find balance in one's life. So I feel like it's a, it comes from, you may not know what you need, but when you connect with a practitioner and there's a talking, then it will, it's not a formula. We don't go, oh, section day 1, we're going to give you it's definitely customized to your needs and what we feel could be most helpful. And again, what's doable for you. I did want to say, I kind of had my Artist Health Center hat on, and I forgot to mention something else that's very exciting. There are some free programs happening that are generously sponsored by various music organizations and things like that, but specifically Art House, which is a Serena Ryder project. It's a studio and they have a wellness program wing. And I've worked with Serena in a few different capacities, and she asked me to create a course on finding balance. And some of the weeks are named exactly what the themes of your album songs are. So that's what I really loved. Relax correlates to the pause, and mind matters correlates to the little myth, etc. Cultivating connection goes with help. So I just thought that was fascinating. But we are going to be, it's free to participants.
Oh, great.
And we are starting level 1 again in January. So you can go to Art House Music, and that's ARTHAUS. It should come up. I did give the link.
Yep,
music,
it was there.
And register for that because it's free and it's a way to connect and address what your needs are. There's a program starting on November 16th for LGBT2GS2 community on resilience. And they also created a program which ran and will run again for people with racialized trauma. So it's a really exciting project, and they're generously sponsoring that. So it is free to the community at this point. So that's another resource that's really good. And I hope that I can work with some of you in January on that.
That sounds good. I'm just positively overwhelmed with the information about what you guys do and how you do things, and it's just I'm impressed. I'm really glad that something like this exists, and I really hope that some information provided this evening may have helped someone that saw this panel, and yeah, just keep going, I guess is really, yeah, it's great.
Thank you. And, please reach out to us because we exist because you exist. So we're happy to develop programs and meet demands and happy to serve. So
great. Well, if anybody else has any questions, maybe we're cutting it off here. I'm just gonna see anybody else. Maybe not. I think we're throwing to Johnny Dovercourt now.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for coming to tonight's discussion. I hope it was helpful and insightful for you as it was for me. I'm going to start incorporating the pause into my day-to-day. Thanks again to our two amazing speakers, Les Seaforth and Dr. Anita Shack. Do visit the Al and Malka Green Artists Health Center, and please check out the new More or Less album, The Human Condition, dropping this Friday, the 13th. On all your favorite streaming platforms. Please follow Wavelength on social media at Wavelength Music, and don't miss the next Wavelength event, a double header of emerging artists from the GTA, John Crow and Westa Laken, coming up November 26th on YouTube Live. And please keep an eye out in your email inbox for a follow-up survey about tonight's panel. We're planning more talks and panels for the new year, and we're looking for your input on topics and speakers. Thank you again, and have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.